You're watching continuing coverage of the coronavirus on CBT News.
Hi everyone, Jim Fitzpatrick with CBT News. Thanks so much for joining us today. Today we're joined by Cody Tomczyk, who's Vice President of Force Marketing. We want to talk to you, Cody, about the things that are taking place at dealerships right now. You know, I woke up this morning, saw 5 different commercials from OEMs, and they were all pushing different programs offered during this coronavirus situation. 6 months till your first payment, 0% financing, will forgive credit situations. I mean, there was a whole slew of different things that the OEMs were coming out to help consumers with. It looks to me when you watch these commercials like it's the car business is up and running and doing well. I know you work with dealerships all over the country. What's your take on things?
Yeah, and first, thanks for having me. You know, what's interesting right now is that there's sort of 2 worlds that we're living in. It's one, the world from the OEM support side, which, by the way, I'm super impressed with how fast they've been to respond with offers like that to help stimulate in really challenging times.
That's right.
The reality is that this thing we're facing with Corona is a really regionalized sort of problem. You know, we talk to dealers up in the Northeast in Pennsylvania, or you know, dealers in the Great Lakes in the Michigan area where, you know, they all got a stop sale this week on all retailing on Tuesday morning. But you talk to dealers in Texas and, you know, they're selling cars like, you know, there's nothing going on in the country right now.
Yeah.
And it's not just enough to say, okay, what is the OEM doing or what is the reality of the space? It's really drilling a lot deeper than that. Mm-hmm. The dealers need to do for a moment is to take a step back. They need to take a deep breath, and they need to ask themselves some questions. They need to understand, you know, what is my current reality for the operation of my business? Like, am I in a state like a Pennsylvania where I cannot retail a car? What does that mean? Am I in a state like New Jersey where it's a little bit left open to interpretation depending on the operation of the business, and I'll retail you at home or, you know, one-on-one service or sales appointments at the store? And once they identify where they sit in that spectrum and what their comfortability is with the laws and regulations that are being levied on a near daily basis, they can say, okay, great, now I have a foundation to put a plan together. And from there, it's about then just taking in new information as it comes out hour by hour, sort of minute by minute, to say, okay, I have these manufacturer offers and that's great, but what can I do with them and what does that mean for my business?
Right. So what does that mean, and what do they do with them? I mean, it's you're in marketing and you've got a bunch of dealers. What have you found to be working? And at the same time, these dealers are struggling with what may come across as being insensitive to the current situation. If we're out there, you know, hey, we're trying to sell you a car, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, you know, and all of this is taking place right now in the country.
Yeah, it's another great question, right? So as you think about sort of the update this week, if you looked at it from last week, IHS did a forecast where they were dropping the SAR down to 15.5. I saw an update last night that suggests it's going to be 14.5 for this year, right? So with the new information coming, we've got to sort of figure out what that new reality looks like. That new reality also includes, how do I communicate with my customers? You know, earlier this week, you know, I saw you had John Fitzpatrick on and Jeff Brown on, and you know, Jeff's talking a lot about what is the obligation of the dealer to not market to the consumer, but communicate to the consumer, communicate to their constituents. And from our perspective, you know, you can't just do what everybody else is doing and put that 0% financing for 84 months, you know, no payments, 90 days. We will service and sell you a car at home, because that's what everybody else is doing. And by and large, while it may be a new shift in being a focal point in servicing the customers, it's still not necessarily solely focusing on servicing the customer. What I mean by that is we have to have this new tone that comes out that says, I'm here to help you. I'm get you through this time. If it's payment relief you need because of job loss, we're here to help you.
Right.
If it's servicing your vehicle so you can run your business, we're here to help you.
You're part of the solution as a dealer.
You have to be, right? And by the way, a lot of this, and you know, I heard them talk about this earlier this week, a lot of this is really just, and what I mean by a lot of this, I mean COVID, is a catalyst for what we should be doing in the space anyway. Like having our marketing communication strategy be customer centric first. If we do, generally we will win. Look at other businesses like the Amazons of the world that are customer centric first. From there, you got to then take a step back and say, okay, here's the reality of my state. Here's the reality of the operation of my business. Here are my constituents. Now, who do I want to communicate with, and what do I want to communicate to them? So that's going to be people like, you've heard people talk about the 1.8 million in expiring leases that are coming. Those are people who need service on their vehicle. Those are people with high APR rates, right? Those are people who are in distressed financial situations, Uber drivers, Lyft, airline employees, restaurant workers. And then from there, you have an audience-based strategy that aligns with your business reality within your state and in your organization that allows you then to communicate with those customers. And then it's back to just marketing 101. You put that benevolent tone, right message in front of them in the channels or on the publishers that they are consuming the most, which right now is heavy social, CTV, OTT, streaming audio, email's been really effective, outbound calling, so you're one-to-one and really personalized. I think if you take a look at it from that perspective, you've got a lot of great opportunity to transition your business during this time without taking a hit.
Sure, it's a very good point. I heard one expert that predicted that we're going to see an online or a boom of online sales and online transactions here in the next couple of months, because you're going to be getting these families across the country will be getting these checks. In some cases, they'll be getting checks while they have full employment, but they'll be getting their $1,200 for each person, each adult, $500 for each child. If there's 2 or 3 kids, a family could end up with a few extra $1,000 over and above their compensation. I guess just to offset additional costs or something having to do with this virus. But this expert was talking about the fact that he predicts that there will be an online sales boom from whether it be new TVs or computers or automobiles, because people will be online while they're home, and they'll have this extra cash available to them. And then with all of the incentives, you combine that with all the incentives that the OEM's putting forth, he said you could see a jump up in car sales. Have you heard or see that from your perspective?
I do, but I'm going to put a little bit of a different lens on it. There's going to be pent-up demand during this period of time. I think we all recognize that. The manufacturers are doing their part to incentivize the sales growth on the other side. But I was talking to the head marketing team at one of the publicly traded auto groups the other night, and one of the things they're forecasting, which I thought was an interesting point. Now, this is brand dependent, but as you've had brands pull back on manufacturing, we're going to have this boon on the other side of this pent-up demand. Those incentives may not last as long as some people are predicting, because if inventory levels are not there, there's no reason to incentivize that deal.
Right.
That's going to be remaining to be seen. I think it's also going to lend itself to a great used car opportunity during this time. But then also to your point about the digital commerce, the online retailing of the vehicle. This goes back to what I was talking about a second ago around, this is a catalyst for what needs to be done. And we're really going to find ourselves on the other end of this in what we're calling a new normal. And some of that new normal we can predict, and some will remain to be seen. But when it comes to something like online retailing, if we can service the customer at home during this period of time, if we can retail at home during this period of time, there are reasons to believe that that is going to be the new expectation for the consumer.
Yeah.
If that's the case, then we need to continue to evolve our businesses very quickly. I don't think, unlike other industries, that it's going to be as a dramatic of sort of this exponential uptick in online deliveries, et cetera, in automotive, simply because the processes at the dealership are still imperfect. The technology is still imperfect, and there's still a lot of regulation state to state, that may prevent that.
Yeah.
One thing that dealers need to take a look at, though, is what is my plan to exit this on the other side? And that's an operational plan, but that's also a marketing and communications plan. So I'll talk about the marketing side, obviously, because that's our expertise. what a lot of dealers are going to make the mistake of doing, and it's not to their fault, it's just the reality that we live in right now, where this right now has an indefinite period on it. That makes it the most challenging thing. We don't know when we're going to come out the other side. So it's really hard to say, well, okay, if it's May 1st, well, I'm going to have my plan in place by April 15th, and I'm going to enact my plan 7 days before, and I'm going to ramp up. The reality is we don't know that that's going to happen. We don't know when that's going to happen. So it does make it a bit of a moving target, but that doesn't mean you don't need to plan for it. Because the dealers, in my estimation, are going to have sort of a false sense of success on the other side of this, because they're sort of like, people going through the desert right now, and, a glass of water is going to look really attractive, right? When we get to the other side of this recovery and there's all this pent up demand, a lot of people are predicting that it's going to be grabbing car deal after car deal, and it's going to feel really great. But that may be a false sense of success, because what if you're not getting your fair share? Like, it's more than you had, but it's not as much as you could have had. Mm-hmm. And I think dealers need to plan and strategize in advance of that, is to have not only the recovery plan in place, but the ramp up plan in place leading up to that recovery. 7 days before, 5 days before, 3 days before, 1 day before, and then on into when the doors are open and it's business as usual. If you communicate with your customers during this period of time, not only can you deepen the relationship for a longer, better lifetime value with that customer, but you can also set yourself up to grab more than your unfair share on the other side. But you have to act now. You cannot wait. And even if it means not spending as much now and banking that money for later, you still have to act now on a plan.
And your recommendation for the dealers that are watching, defined act now, what steps would you like them to take, or do you suggest they take?
I think, like I said, first within their own organization, identify sort of what they're up against with their operations and their state restrictions. I would then implement what we're calling, and by the way, I should give credit. We've been developing maintenance plans for our clients over the last 7 days that are very tailored to their audiences, how to have a minimal communication plan to maintain the obligation of the dealership to talk to them and provide value and service to them. That idea actually came out of collaboration with some of our best clients on some late night calls over the last week. So I got to give credit where credit is due there. But that plan needs to be taking place like today. I would start to forecast, okay, when the recovery happens and the doors open on my business, what is my go-to-market plan? Who am I talking to? Where am I going to talk to them? How am I going to reach them? What am I going to tell them? And then what you do then is sort of back into, okay, a day before that, what does that look like? 2 days before that, what does that look like? And what you're going to end up with is this buildup of a plan that allows your business to prepare in advance. Because like some of the best organizations, and I was just on a call with a 40-store group that's a really, really great partner of ours with a lot of really smart people. What they're doing is they're using their business analytics combined with our business intelligence to forecast 2 weeks in advance when they think that ramp up is going to happen based on consumer behavior. And their plan is going to start 2 weeks. I think it's just work with your partners, work with your store, and identify what that plan is, but do that today.
Yeah, there's no time like the present, especially in the current environment that we're in, and I agree with you. I think dealers have to look beyond this virus situation to what does it look like, when things are back to normal, and to your point, are you prepared for that? So I couldn't agree more. Cody, Tomczyk, I want to thank you so much for joining us on CBT News. We very much appreciate it. Love to have you back to talk more about this issue. I think dealers need to prepare and need to hear your message there. And for dealers that are watching right now that want to learn more, and reach out to Cody. He's available, obviously, with Force Marketing, and he can help you kind of navigate what you should be doing right now to get the message out, and to his point, not so much advertise, but to communicate with the consumers and the shoppers in your market. And I think we all agree that those shoppers are going to come back in a very big way. So again, Cody, thanks so much. Really appreciate your visiting here on CBT News.
Appreciate it, Jim. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Thanks for watching coverage of the coronavirus on CBT News. This has been a JBF Business Media production.